Hey everybody, hope you're having a good rest of the weekend. We're up to Sunday here, getting into the Thanksgiving week here. And pretty soon Christmas, so we'll be here. I guess we're down to maybe 5 weeks. Anyway, this is what it looked like outside about an hour ago. Very pretty, and looks like the moon going down. And a lot of cirrus layers, so we're getting a little bit of that tropical flow from the Pacific. The charts right now are looking like this here, and we're looking at potential temperature. So these are measurements of temperature reduced to the 1000 millibar level, which is usually around 300 feet MSL. And what I'm looking for on here is gradients. And I do have a little bit of a gradient from Texas to Illinois. But what I'm looking for is a really tight and localized gradient. And I see a little bit of that maybe in Colorado, down to New Mexico like that. It looks like another gradient across the Great Basin area. So that could be another potential area for a front. However, I think a lot of this region is under high pressure. So that would result in frontalysis and break up those temperature contrasts. Elsewhere, another active frontal region is down along the Gulf Coast up to the Gulf Stream. It's pretty well offshore there, but it looks like in Florida I can pick up a little bit of a temperature gradient from about Vero Beach down to Fort Myers. And the only other gradient I can find is way up there in Alberta. Looks like from about south of Calgary, maybe through the Calgary area right there, just kind of a tight gradient. Looks like maybe a warm front. And this is an area of possible frontogenesis coming together. There's the thickness and isobars, and it does look like something is coming together up in the Pacific Northwest. Very strong thickness gradient up in that region, and offshore we've got a new frontal system moving into the Washington and Oregon coast there. So I think the setup is looking a little bit like that right there. Okay, let me take a look at the chat here and see how things are going. I will let you know I'm very, very busy with the book, and it actually has to be finished in the next couple of days because we're getting down to the deadlines, and that means time is very tight with that. We have Ron Chalfant here in Burl H, Fun with Tech. Sarah Wood got the first snow of the season, just a trace. Ryan Toomeys is here down in Florida, and Ron Chalfant, 29 degrees in the Southern California area, up in the mountains, I think. Good day for sitting in front of the fireplace. Megan John, 27 in Minnesota. David Moore reporting a nice day in the Metroplex today, DFW, highs in the 60s. Ryan Toomeys says the front is supposed to pull through in the next few hours. I think that's in the Miami or Fort Lauderdale area. So maybe a little bit of cooling in that region. And Ron says winter is getting close. And Ryan's saying freezing conditions really showing itself in the West and Midwest. And great time to be in South Florida. Okay, so this will be kind of a short one. Trace in Milwaukee from Bill Johnson. Okay, very good. So we're probably just going to run about 15 minutes with this presentation. But up there in the Ontario and Great Lakes area, pretty good, pretty thick area of cold air moving southward. So all this area right here, cold air advection coming down mostly on the east coast. High pressure across the Texarkana area. And on the north side of that, we're getting that warm air advection, the downslope flow starting up there in the Central Plains. Most of the cold air advection is confined to the East Coast and the Gulf Coast down in this area right there. So it's just about out of the picture here. The surface front runs from about Nova Scotia down along the Gulf Stream, down into the Fort Myers, or Fort... going blank here. Fort Lauderdale area. A lot of forts in Florida there. And then a warm front up there moving up towards Newfoundland. So the core of the polar air over Ontario, high pressure there of Texarkana, and then, of course, our systems out west. So that's kind of the picture right there. And obviously, in the Great Basin area, high pressure there, so that will probably help break up that frontal boundary running through that area. It's very stormy up in Alaska, too. The Gulf of Alaska there showing a new frontal system. Very potent one moving through that area. And Alaska itself looks to be actually a little bit north of all that. The core of the polar air looks like it's up over Inuvik and Banks Island way up there. Okay, here's a look at the 700 millibar chart. Let me bring this down to 850. So this shows a lot of the cold air over the Great Lakes like we were talking about. Most of the cold air advection out on the East Coast. And this shows that at 850 millibars, the dominant feature is a large high-pressure area, kind of a ridge, all the way down to Texas. So on the north side of that, westerlies and downslope flow from the Rockies. And up to the north, quite a bit of cold air up in Yukon, Northwest Territories. We got minus 25 there at 850. So it looks like the 850 millibar front running from about Edmonton to Bismarck, kind of like that. And probably connecting up something like that right there. I need to write a good front plotting tool. That would be kind of useful. But anyway, so yeah, there's the polar front boundary. Then up to the north, that's the big polar air mass up there in the Yukon. At 700 millibars, we're going to see a very similar picture there. So cold air kind of locked up there in Canada and also in the Great Lakes. And then the 500 millibar chart looking like this. Polar front jet appears to be pretty far up north. And that's kind of hanging around that frontal zone, obviously. And then a segment in the southern states kind of like that. And then at 250 millibars, this shows the jet max on the east coast right there, and jet max associated with that active frontal system in British Columbia and Alberta there. So a little bit of ridging there associated with the warm air advection south of the front in Alberta. It looks like a little bit of a weak trough coming through Nevada and Arizona this morning. Let me see where that is. I'm going to see if we've got a 0Z chart. Yeah, we do. Okay, so 0Z. There it is right there. So a little bit of a, I want to say maybe a large shortwave moving through New Mexico. Okay, so we're going to try to find that on the upper air chart. There's a vorticity chart. Let me bring that up very, let's see, there it is. Okay, so there's the current NAM, and it appears the vorticity chart showing kind of a negative tilt trough right there from about Phoenix down to northwest Mexico. So that's it right there. And there's probably another one right there around El Paso. So this could be an area of maybe some clouds moving through the flow. And if we had a lot of cold air over Texas, this could have the potential to bring precip to Texas itself. So let's see if there's a reflection of that on the satellite. And the satellite showing not much of a indication. So we're expecting that system to be moving through that area right there. So let's check the water vapor. And yeah, I do think I see something on there. Let me zoom that in. Okay, so now we're zoomed in a little bit. Have to reset the width and height. Okay, so this is the area that we're looking at, and it appears there might be a little bit of something here, but just not showing much of that wave. It looks like maybe there is something going through the Gulf of California. So let me go back to the charts. Okay, so it looks like there probably is a little bit of a discrepancy between the satellite and the analysis. This one has a definite feature in eastern Arizona, in this region. Satellite seems to be putting it more in this area. So those are the kind of things that we look for when we're verifying the model data there. So you can see what's going on there. The vorticity analysis was showing pretty much nothing in this area. That was putting a lot of it over Arizona like that. So those are the kind of things that we watch for there. Other than that, a little bit of moisture coming across Texas right there. Looks like some indication of a little bit of ridging. And you can kind of see that ridging right there. And we'll check out the SCU-Ts. Yeah, forward SCU-Ts showing a little bit of elevated relative humidity up near the top. And we'll try Shreveport. Showing that moisture very well up there. Looks like it's based at about 29,000 feet there, but lots of dry air in the mid and lower levels. Elsewhere around the country, we'll try Wilmington, Ohio. We know that they're back in the cold air. You can see the northwest winds. Looks like the top of the frontal inversion, maybe about 850 millibars. A little bit of trapped relative humidity under that, so this is a good pattern for stratocumulus clouds. Very low tropopause indicating the cold air. Along the east coast, we'll try Miami. Looks like they're picking up a little bit of northwest winds there. So maybe a little bit of the cold air approaching, mostly in the 5,000 to 10,000 foot range. Looks like maybe a little bit of mixing down to the surface there, but lots of dry air over that area. And then we'll try San Diego. Lots of dry air in that area, northwest winds, so kind of a mild pattern there, but lots of moisture in the upper levels. Okay, so I think we're Probably just going to head into the forecast. That way I can kind of get back to work and hopefully get all this finished. What you're looking at here, this is the 850 millibar temperature anomaly. And the current chart looks like this. This shows that the conditions just above the surface, colder than normal from the Great Lakes down to Texas. But we're really developing that downslope flow underneath some of that upper level ridging in this area. Montana, Alberta. And this shows very plainly where the 850 millibar front is. So looking like that right there. And we can see how this progresses over the next day. You can see that downslope really gets going in the Dakotas. And then pieces of that downslope air move southeastward into the Great Lakes. So we should see a warm-up around Minneapolis and Chicago going into Tuesday and Wednesday. And then behind that, some cold air coming south. Conditions really warming up in California this week. Then by Thanksgiving, the maps are going to look like this. Lots of warm air in the western U.S. Calgary and Edmonton and Montana, very warm. It looks like a new outbreak of cold air coming south through Ontario. So that'll be moving towards the Great Lakes. And conditions kind of mild back in the eastern U.S. And there goes that little slug of cold air. If you're in New England, you would definitely notice that. And a pretty good chunk of very warm air heading southeast later this week, Friday into Saturday. And you can see that reaches the Great Lakes, gets picked up by the westerlies, and some of it makes it down into Texas. And then behind that, a little bit of a mild cold air outbreak. So there that goes, more cold air into the eastern U.S., warm air in between. So that'll be kind of a cold period, and things really come together next week, 28th, 29th. This looks like a very good push of cold air, and California should be a little bit stormy in that area. And that makes its way across the Rockies, the 29th and 30th. And there it is, emerging out to the plains. Pacific front looking like that. And then it does link up with some Canadian air. And there's the leading edge of that right there. So the 30th and 30th and the 1st, there it goes. Out into the Great Lakes, and a little bit of cool weather for the first days of December. And then we regenerate some more cold air out to the west, so we know that there is going to be some upper level troughing in that region right there and ridging over the eastern U.S. So this will be a little bit of a pattern shift coming up for the first week of December. So there goes that system, and it looks like maybe another one coming together. There it goes in California, very potent. Temperatures running about 20 degrees Celsius below normal. That's going to be about 30 Fahrenheit degrees. So it looks like some very cold weather coming up for LA around the 5th and 6th, maybe up into the Reno area. Northern California too, this whole area looking pretty cold. And that's it. That's the end of that chart sequence. And the surface charts will look very similar. So there's a quick run through. Alberta Clipper coming south for the 21st. And then Thanksgiving looking like this here. It's mostly a little bit of an Alberta Clipper, a little bit of snow showers in the northern UP of Michigan. Looks like some rain coming across Florida here. So that system works up northeast. And then it should be fairly mild, just a couple of outbreaks coming across the Great Lakes. And then it gets stormy towards the next week. There it goes. There's system number 1 coming out into the plains. And then we're looking at system number 2 coming together. There it is. And that's going to be probably one of the stronger outbreaks there. And you can see a little bit of a upper level vortex over the San Joaquin Valley there on the 5th. Okay, let's see here. Looking at the rest of the chat, Sue M is joining us, and that's about all we got. So I will get back to the book, and I'm hoping to finish up here very soon. So anyway, that'll do it for me. I hope you all have a good evening, and take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.